Finally, now I'd like to give the floor to Motsomi Maletjane, who works in the Adaptation Programme of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat. Motsomi leads the work of the UNFCCC Secretariat on support to least developed countries and also works on national adaptation plans. So, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I'll take the opportunity to follow on cue from my predecessor speakers to also stand up, which makes it a little bit easy for me. But first of all, I want to thank Christina, the ITU, Dr. Chai Subli, for continuing to invite us to engage us in this important work on the Green Standards Week and the United for Smart Sustainable Cities. It's always a pleasure for us to be here. And also to thank the city of Valencia for organizing this important event here. My job here, I think throughout the day, what we have had is cooperation, collaboration. And this is part of what we also take seriously when we address issues related to climate change, because it's only when we truly cooperate and collaborate at all different levels that we can confront the size of the problem that we have. So I'm going to communicate simply to you where we are and what we are planning under the climate change, and also to continue to see how we can engage better the ITU community or the ICT community to help us, because I think we do need you. The solutions could be there. We do need you to help us to see how we can scale up what we are doing beyond what we currently have in our hands. The mayor this morning of Alesund introduced three words. She did mention that initially climate change was ridiculed, and at some point it was rejected. And she did mention that lately now it is accepted. And I like what the speaker from the city of Valencia as well also mentioned, that now it's being perceived as an emergency. So there has been a good journey on how climate change has been perceived, and indeed it is an emergency now, given the impacts we see today. What the Paris Agreement, under the Paris Agreement, what we are setting as the goal is to try to limit temperatures below the 2 degrees temperature limit. You might have heard about this too many times. And the latest scientific findings already tell us that we are already feeling the effects of 1 degree. So you can imagine if it doubles, we are doubling the scale of impact and the scale of problems we are seeing today. So the Paris Agreement is trying to limit that, and we are trying to engage to see how best we can achieve this. And we know there are so many pressures, both on the land systems, on the ecosystems as well. And these are all the natural systems that help us to be able to live, to be able to provide for the citizens. And the impacts to them, of course, are going to impact on how we are able to make progress. The good part also that was also mentioned in the morning, despite the fact that we have this big problem, is that there is momentum and there is willingness, despite the fact that we still need to find the best ways on how to get there. With the momentum, just the past week we have the Climate Summit in New York, where many governments and many business leaders made very big commitments. They committed to continue to see how they can reduce the greenhouse gases to solve the problem. And many of them pledged investments in money and in many ways in strategies and everything that would see how they can improve the whole industry to see how we can transition ourselves into a better future. So it shows that there is momentum, there is political willingness, there is movement to that end. And at the same time, there are so many actions that are happening. From this morning, we've had examples on greening the cities, on mobility, transport systems, and many others. And around the world, many of you would know that farmers are investing a lot in changing what they grow. And in sometimes, actually, some of them improve the ways on what they do, and some switch altogether. As an example, some farmers already are deciding to switch to grow from water-intensive crops because they realize that the amount of water we are having in the world is becoming limited, to try to see whether you can have crops that use less water. And some governments are passing legislation on these to actually cut on crops like rice. So this is also some of the important movement that we are seeing that is happening. But despite the momentum and some of the actions that are happening, one of the realities is that what we are currently doing, unfortunately, is not enough. It's not adequate for what is truly needed. We need to do a little bit more of what we are doing right now. The governments under the UNFCCC process, many of you might have heard about this word, we talk about nationally determined contributions. These are the commitments by the different governments on how they want to help or they want to implement policies in their own countries to help reduce the greenhouse gases, but also at the same time to invest in climate resilient development. Those NDCs are far from leading us into what I mentioned is the 2-degree temperature goal, and also from saving our systems and our societies from the impacts and hazards we are seeing today. So, but there's an opportunity, there's a doorway that we can do more. The IPCC reports of the scientific findings from our side tell us that we have 10 years to see how we can curb that curve. It's a limited time of period, based on how long it has taken us to arrive at where we are. But we still have some hope and some time that if we can cut and achieve net zero emissions by 2050, then we will be able to achieve our target of the 1.5 degrees. And we are glad that also there are initiatives even from the community, from the ICT sector, from the ICT industry, to see how best we can do and achieve this goal. It's not going to take the governments alone, it's not going to take the business alone, but it's everyone. And how we collaborate and cooperate on that is a very important matter for that. So currently, as we move on to, you will know that in our current regime in the UNFCCC process, last year where we had a large conference where after we had adopted the Paris Agreement, now we're fitting the nuts and bolts of the whole agreement. We now have everything and the car is ready, is fitted with everything that it needs. And this year we are now thinking or talking about how do we scale up the implementation or the ambition that we want. And this is what now we are working towards. And that's why I said, as I started my intervention now, is that cooperation, collaboration, engaging everybody else, governments, industries, the business, everyone. I think this is an important opportunity for us now to start to undertake ambitious measures. And I liked our first speaker. You did mention something that is very nice. I didn't see it that way, that we have the opportunity to make contributions. We don't know for how long we will be able to have this opportunity where we are able to have a say in terms of what we need to happen. And in fact, indeed, we do have the opportunity to make a change. And I think this is the time that we could probably invest in that. And frontier technologies, we have seen some solutions and some examples I was providing through conventional technologies. And we are already seeing and hopeful that the frontier technologies will help us leapfrog some of the actions that we want to do. And that's part of why I'm here, and I'm excited to be part of this, to see how I can carry this forward and how we can bridge this to see how we can scale up climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Motsomi. You mentioned then about how momentum is obviously building around this topic. I'd also like to thank all of you for keeping the momentum going this afternoon. We've had some very energetic interventions from everybody on this panel, so thank you to all of you.